Welcome to Neuromystique, where we delve into the enigmas of the human mind and unravel the intricate threads of existence. Today, we embark on a journey that intersects existential philosophy and modern psychology, a journey rooted in the timeless insights of Albert Camus. By weaving Camus' vision of the absurd with contemporary understandings of the mind, we will illuminate how his ideas resonate with our daily struggles, anxieties, and quest for meaning. Albert Camus, 1913 to 1960, was a French-Algerian philosopher, novelist, and essayist, best known for articulating and expanding the concept of the absurd. In a world fractured by war, Camus confronted a philosophical question that resonates powerfully to this day. If life is stripped of all illusions, if it is effectively without an inherent meaning, how should we respond? On the surface, Camus' ideas may seem bleak or disheartening, yet he proposed something both nuanced and liberating: to acknowledge the profound irrationality at the heart of existence, and to live in full awareness of it, embracing each moment with a defiant human spirit. This tension between the desire for meaning and the cold refusal of the universe to grant it is the core of Camus' concept of the absurd. Before we immerse ourselves further, it's crucial to note that much has changed since Camus' era. Psychology has advanced significantly, finding fresh theories and therapies that explore the human experience from scientific, clinical, and even spiritual perspectives. As we will see, many of these ideas echo Camus' philosophical insights, even if they do not explicitly reference his works. Our exploration will involve bridging Camus' existential reflections with modern psychological approaches, such as cognitive behavioral therapies, mindfulness practices, and existential humanistic therapy. Why revisit Camus now? In an age saturated with technology, instantaneous communication, and constant media bombardment, many people report feeling adrift, perpetually anxious, and uncertain about their purpose. Disconnected from traditional social structures, we are confronted with new illusions and fresh uncertainties. Perhaps more than ever, Camus' perspective, the recognition of a fundamental absurdity in human life, resonates. And ironically, it can offer comfort. Throughout this script, we'll examine specific facets of Camus' philosophy, how they illuminate modern psychological phenomena, and why they remain relevant. We'll explore the pivotal notion of the absurd, its existential tensions, and the freedom found in embracing life despite, or even because of, its inherent meaninglessness. We'll also see how contemporary therapies and research on well-being map onto these philosophical ideas, offering strategies for living with authenticity, moral integrity, and purposeful engagement in an indifferent cosmos. Though the subject might sound lofty, our goal is to keep it accessible and relevant. Each section can stand alone as a chapter in our exploration, easily digestible for viewers who want concise reflections on these big existential questions. So, brace yourselves for a deep dive into a realm where despair and hope, certainty and doubt, meaning and meaninglessness collide. By the end, you might just find that the question of life's absurdity is intimately bound to your own psychological journey. Join us as we unveil Camus' dance with the absurd, a dance that beckons us to discover our own steps, forging resilience and clarity within the chaos. Camus' historical context and philosophical roots. To fully understand Albert Camus' philosophical stance, we must revisit the milieu in which his ideas took shape. Born in French Algeria, Camus was raised in a modest environment, deeply influenced by the stark sunlight and rugged landscapes of North Africa. This sunlit yet austere backdrop would later frame many of his literary works, including his novel The Stranger, 1942, and essay The Myth of Sisyphus, 1942. Camus lived through a tumultuous period in history. He witnessed the devastation of World War II, the moral complexities of resistance to tyranny, and the dissolution of old cultural certainties. Like many of his existentialist contemporaries, Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone de Beauvoir among them, Camus wrestled with profound ethical questions: how to live authentically in the face of war's horrors, how to preserve personal agency in a seemingly indifferent world, Yet unlike some existentialists who leaned into political ideologies or grand theories, Camus often chose to remain an outsider. In his eyes, commitment to any overarching ideology risked ignoring the elemental absurdity lying at the core of human existence. The philosophical climate of 20th century Europe was ripe with existential thought, born out of the ashes of 2 world wars. People questioned the assumptions of progress and reason that had dominated the 19th century. They saw these illusions shattered by the mechanized slaughter of modern warfare. Philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Martin Heidegger provided existential frameworks emphasizing individual freedom, choice, and the burden of constructing one's own meaning. Camus, while influenced by these thinkers, forged a unique path. He wasn't content to simply propose that humans create their own meaning in a meaningless world. Instead, he highlighted the stark, never-resolved confrontation between the human yearning for clarity and the universe's silent indifference. One hallmark of Camus's thought is the idea of revolt. In his view, recognizing the absurd is not the end point, it's the invitation to rebel against despair. This is evident in the Myth of Sisyphus, where he uses the Greek mythological figure Sisyphus, condemned by the gods to forever push a boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll down, to symbolize humanity's incessant struggle. Camus famously concludes that one must imagine Sisyphus happy, as the defiance inherent in continuing the struggle is itself a source of triumph and dignity. Importantly, Camus' focus was not on metaphysical speculation or abstract theory. He cared deeply about practical human concerns. His work grappled with ethical dimensions, urging individuals to be morally responsible even if the universe offered no ultimate justification. This spirit aligns with modern psychological approaches that emphasize personal responsibility, self-awareness, and authenticity in the face of life's uncertainties. As we journey deeper, keep in mind this historical context: a man shaped by colonial Algeria, the catastrophes of global conflict, and the existential undercurrents of the 20th century. Camus's worldview emerges from real human suffering and tangible socio-political strife, not just armchair speculation. Therefore, his insights into the absurd, far from being mere intellectual curiosities, hold a raw and urgent relevance. And as we'll soon see, they dovetail remarkably with contemporary psychological insights into anxiety, depression, and the ongoing quest for a meaningful life in a world that can appear unrelenting and inscrutable. The core of the absurd. Central to Camus's philosophy is the concept of the absurd. This term is often misunderstood as a catch-all for randomness or chaos, but for Camus, it has a specific nuance. The absurd arises from the confrontation between 2 irrefutable truths. On one hand, our innate drive to seek meaning, order, and purpose. On the other, the silent universe that seemingly offers no inherent meaning or guiding principle. It is the tension, the clash, and the incongruity between these 2 forces that defines the absurd. Imagine standing on a beach, scanning the horizon for a sign, a pattern in the waves, a signal of cosmic intention. No matter how intently we look, the vast ocean does not respond. It simply exists, blind to our yearnings. In that moment of awareness, Camus suggests, we feel the absurd. It does not mean that life is worthless, nor does it imply absolute despair. Instead, the absurd is a recognition that our longing for ultimate answers may never be fulfilled, yet we continue longing regardless. For Camus, most people try to flee from this uncomfortable realization. We cling to illusions, religion, ideology, or personal narratives, to mask the absurdity, to reassure ourselves that we belong to a purposeful plan. Others might succumb to nihilism, concluding that if no ultimate meaning exists, then nothing matters. But Camus considered both roots forms of philosophical suicide. When we embrace illusions uncritically, or when we deny the intrinsic value of life outright, we close our eyes to the genuine human predicament. Instead, Camus proposes facing the absurd head-on. This is a conscious act of clarity, a paradoxical acceptance of the tension without trying to resolve it. Life remains as it is, messy, unpredictable, indifferent, but we respond with steadfast awareness. Paradoxically, Camus sees liberation in this stance. Once we stop seeking cosmic validation, we discover the freedom to invent our own meaning in each moment. The absurd man or woman does not rely on metaphysical assurances, but finds vitality in the very act of living, loving, and creating, despite the looming silence of the universe. In many ways, this stance resonates with existential humanistic psychology, which emphasizes personal responsibility, authenticity, and the courage to confront existential givens, such as death, isolation, and meaninglessness. Psychologists like Rollo May and Irvin Yalom have echoed that genuine healing often begins when a person acknowledges life's inherent uncertainties and chooses to engage nonetheless. The idea is that mental well-being is not merely about the absence of symptoms, but about living more fully and purposefully within the limitations of mortality and the unknown. Yet acknowledging the absurd is no small feat. It can trigger existential anxiety, as it calls for dismantling cherished certainties. It also demands that we craft personal meaning in the absence of a universal plan. But for Camus, the risk is worth it. The clarity gained from embracing the absurd can spark an empowering sense of self-directed purpose. In an odd twist, once we accept our cosmic aloneness, we can discover a renewed appreciation for every fleeting moment and every authentic connection. In the sections that follow, we'll explore how this notion of the absurd aligns with, and sometimes challenges, modern psychological thinking. We will also see why this perspective can be a powerful antidote to despair, not by providing final answers, but by inviting us to live richly in the midst of uncertainty. Psychological parallels, from cognitive dissonance to existential therapy. When we pivot to modern psychology, we notice intriguing parallels between Camus' insights on the absurd and certain psychological constructs. One parallel is with cognitive dissonance, a term coined by psychologist Leon Festinger. Cognitive dissonance refers to the mental discomfort that arises when we hold two conflicting beliefs, or when our behavior contradicts our self-perceptions. Although Festinger's theory does not directly discuss the absurd, its underlying dynamic, tension caused by irreconcilable demands or truths, resembles Camus' core conflict, the desire for meaning against an indifferent universe. In everyday life, people often resort to mental gymnastics to reduce dissonance, whether by rationalizing, denying, or modifying beliefs. Similarly, in the face of existential dissonance, individuals may cling to ideology, dogma, or denial to quell the unsettling realization that the universe offers no predetermined meaning. Camus would argue that instead of alleviating discomfort by embracing convenient illusions, one could learn to endure it, to see it as a catalyst for clarity and genuine freedom. Another modern psychological echo is found in existential therapy. Pioneered by figures like Ludwig Binswanger, Viktor Frankl, and Irvin Yalom, existential therapy emphasizes confronting life's fundamental givens: death, freedom, isolation, and meaninglessness. Though Frankl's concept of will to meaning deviates from Camus in that Frankl posits a crucial human need to find purpose, both viewpoints converge on the importance of facing life's inherent uncertainties rather than hiding from them. Camus would say we create meaning in spite of the absurd, while Frankl would say we discover meaning even in suffering. Subtly different emphasis, but a shared belief in human resilience and personal responsibility. This bridging between Camus and psychological thought continues in more recent developments. For instance, mindfulness-based therapies teach the skill of non-judgmental awareness of one's thoughts and emotions. Though typically drawn from Buddhist traditions, the mindful stance resonates with Camus's prescription of lucid awareness. The mindful practitioner observes the arising of existential fears and yearnings for meaning, but learns not to over-identify with them. Similarly, Camus's embrace of the absurd does not deny these fears, but maintains conscious recognition of them. Furthermore, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, encourages individuals to accept the pain inherent in life and commit to values-aligned action, even when the bigger picture remains uncertain. This approach parallels Camus's recommendation that we continue to push the boulder, forging purpose and dignity in each moment, without expecting the cosmic reward or final resolution. The question arises, does psychologically embracing the absurd solve the existential angst? According to Camus, the absurd is not a problem to be solved, but a condition to be acknowledged and lived with. Many clinicians echo that while therapy can alleviate symptoms of anxiety or depression, it cannot remove the fundamental uncertainties of existence. Instead, it can help people navigate these uncertainties with greater courage and self-awareness. For the modern individual, accustomed to quick fixes and instant gratification, the absurd might be unsettling. And yet, in an era marked by social media echo chambers, global crises, and political polarity, the acceptance of uncertainty can become an act of liberation. Rather than patching over our existential dissonance with shallow distractions, we can look it squarely in the eye. As strange as it sounds, Camus suggests that our personal fulfillment may well hinge on daring to admit that we do not, and may never, know what life ultimately means. In that admission, ironically, a deeper form of clarity and commitment emerges. Revolt as a psychological act. In the Myth of Sisyphus, Camus leaves us with an image that forever seared itself into philosophical imagination. The condemned figure of Sisyphus, tirelessly rolling a boulder uphill, only to watch it tumble back down. Yet, Camus's concluding line, "One must imagine Sisyphus happy," immediately flips a grim story into one of liberation. How can Sisyphus be anything but miserable? The answer lies in what Camus calls revolt. This revolt is not a violent uprising or a political agenda, but an inner stance of defiance against life's inherent meaninglessness. It signifies refusal to be crushed by the weight of cosmic indifference. Instead, one finds dignity in the continued effort, the conscious choice to persist and embrace each moment of life. For Camus, that flicker of defiance is what grants us authenticity. Revolt has a psychological dimension, especially if we draw parallels with resilience theories in psychology. Resilience is often framed as the ability to adapt positively in the face of adversity, to bounce back after hardship. But Camus doesn't simply talk about bouncing back. He envisions a kind of existential resilience where we not only recover but defiantly persist in recognizing the absurd. This stance goes beyond coping. It transforms adversity into a testament of human freedom and creativity. We can see threads of this idea in therapeutic modalities that encourage patients to acknowledge life's unpredictability, find small ways of asserting personal agency, and develop a sense of purpose despite external chaos. Even the principle of post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where individuals report enhanced personal development following traumatic events, echoes Camus. The trauma might highlight the randomness or cruelty of life, yet one emerges stronger, more courageous, and deeply appreciative of each precious moment. Moreover, revolt can be understood through the lens of moral psychology. Camus believed that, in a world devoid of intrinsic moral laws, humans carry the responsibility to craft values and ethical frameworks themselves. Doing good or resisting evil becomes a deliberate act, not something mandated by a cosmic rulebook. The psychological implication here is that moral choice emanates from an internal sense of revolt against the absurd, fueling our urge to shape a just and humane society, even if there is no grand cosmic scoreboard. However, revolt is not a once-and-done realization. It's a daily practice. Like Sisyphus repeatedly pushing his boulder, we must continually reaffirm our choice to live freely and lucidly. This continuous practice demands vigilance. We can easily fall back into complacency, self-deception, or cynicism, letting the absurd paralyze us rather than galvanize us. Ultimately, Camus invites us not to despair at our predicament, but to find joy in it. Joy might sound contradictory here, but it arises from the intensity of living authentically, from tasting the rawness of existence without illusions. The rebel spirit, fueled by awareness of the absurd, transforms the mechanical routine of life into a dance, an unchoreographed dance where each step is a conscious act of creation, not dictated by an external authority. In psychological terms, the concept of revolt underscores the power of choice and perspective. It reminds us that even when life feels futile, we can adopt a stance of purposeful defiance, forging meaning and moral vision from the fragments of a broken cosmos. Absurdity in daily life, applying Camus to modern routines. One might wonder how these lofty existential ideas translate to the day-to-day realities of 21st century life. After all, few of us spend our days pondering the cosmic silence. We're too busy juggling careers, relationships, bills, and countless micro-stresses. Yet, Camus's notion of the absurd and the practice of revolt can subtly inform how we navigate daily routines and psychological challenges. 1. Mindful awareness of repetition. Modern life often feels repetitive: commutes, chores, endless emails. We can grow numb, stuck in autopilot mode. Camus's portrayal of Sisyphus pushing his boulder highlights how daily routines can be both soul-crushing and potentially liberating. By consciously recognizing the repetitive nature of our tasks, we can turn them into deliberate acts, infusing each moment with awareness. You're not just washing dishes, you're engaging in an experience that can be approached with mindfulness, turning a mundane activity into an exercise in presence. 2. Resisting nihilism in the workplace. Many people find their jobs tedious or unfulfilling. In the face of a seemingly meaningless corporate ladder, it's easy to slip into cynicism. Camus's Revolt suggests acknowledging the banality of our tasks, but choosing to perform them with excellence anyway. This defiance doesn't come from company loyalty or illusions of grandeur. It comes from an inner stance that says, I will give this moment my best effort, if only to maintain my own dignity. Such an approach can counteract burnout by cultivating a sense of personal agency, rather than a false sense of cosmic purpose in the job itself. 3. Balancing existential awareness with lightheartedness. The recognition of life's absurdity can sometimes feel heavy. However, Camus was not entirely without humor. The absurd contains elements of irony, which can encourage a playful spirit. In daily life, this means maintaining a sense of perspective, laughing at the small absurdities of modern bureaucracy, social media drama, or the unpredictability of daily events. In doing so, we anchor ourselves in the honest realization that we're all adrift in the same cosmic sea. 4. Crafting personal values. Because Camus offers no universal blueprint for ethics, individuals must articulate their own values. In practical terms, this can mean setting personal standards for kindness, creativity, or integrity, actions that transcend the moment yet remain grounded in the personal sphere. Think of it as a daily protest against meaninglessness. You decide what you stand for, even if no cosmic law compels you. 5. Embracing uncertainty. We often crave security and certainty, yet life's precariousness can unravel even our best-laid plans. Camus' absurd perspective encourages an intimate relationship with uncertainty, recognizing it as the natural state of human affairs. By neither denying nor wallowing in it, we can adapt more gracefully to change. This mindset fosters psychological flexibility, a trait that modern researchers associate with resilience and overall mental health. Applying Camus to daily life does not require dramatic upheavals or radical conversions. Rather, it's a subtle internal shift toward clarity and defiance, carrying out each action with full awareness that there is no ultimate meaning guaranteed, but that we can imbue our actions with significance. This stance paradoxically can make life more vibrant and deeply felt, even amid endless commutes and never-ending to-do lists. Harnessing the absurd, creativity, connection, and purpose. While Camus famously wrote about the absurd, he was also a man of letters, an artist who used novels, essays, and plays to explore the human condition. His artistry points to another dimension of living with the absurd: creativity. When we accept that no single grand narrative defines our purpose, we become free to craft personal stories, symbolic expressions, and imaginative projects. This creative freedom can be an antidote to the anxiety of the unknown. In psychological research, creativity is often linked to flexible thinking, problem-solving, and emotional health. Engaging in creative endeavors, whether painting, writing, music, or even cooking, allows us to transmute existential tensions into something aesthetically meaningful. Consider the difference between aimlessly brooding over life's indifference and consciously channeling that unease into a painting that reflects your emotional landscape. The act itself becomes a moment of revolt, a refusal to be muted by the vastness of the cosmos. Connection with others also weaves into Camus' approach. While existential thought often highlights personal solitude, Camus recognized the profound importance of human solidarity. In The Rebel, he argues that our shared predicament, our collective vulnerability before an indifferent universe, can unite us. From a psychological standpoint, social connection is crucial for mental well-being. The knowledge that we are not alone in our existential grappling can foster empathy and community. The very awareness of universal absurdity might lead us to treat each other with compassion, recognizing that we all toil under similar existential conditions. This perspective resonates with group therapies and support networks that stress shared experiences and mutual validation. The irony is that in acknowledging our cosmic loneliness, we often draw closer to one another, bonding over our shared limitations. This synergy between Camusian thought and modern psychology points toward relationships as an existential lifeline, enabling us to co-create meaning in a world that offers none by default. Yet, does this imply a boundless freedom to do whatever we like, since no cosmic rules exist? Here is where purpose enters. In Camus's framework, purpose arises not from universal decrees but from conscious choice. Each individual can construct a purpose that resonates with personal values, creative impulses, and moral considerations. This might mean dedicating oneself to social justice, pursuing scientific discovery, fostering artistic expression, or simply cultivating loving relationships. The psychological echoes are profound. Studies in positive psychology suggest that a sense of purpose correlates with greater life satisfaction, reduced stress, and even improved physical health. When we set goals aligned with deeply felt values, we experience a sense of coherence that counters the drifting aimlessness of an absurd universe. Camus wouldn't dispute that. He'd simply remind us that these purposes are self-fashioned and must be constantly revisited and reaffirmed, lest they become yet another illusion or empty ritual. In sum, harnessing the absurd can become a wellspring of creativity, deeper interpersonal bonds, and self-chosen purpose. By owning up to our freedom, we can sculpt our own narratives without seeking cosmic permission. In this sense, Camus does not deprive us of meaning. He hands us the sculptor's chisel and challenges us to carve out our own significance. The interplay between these existential insights and modern psychological research can inform a life approach that is both liberating and grounded in real-world practices. Be that art, activism, therapy, or simple day-to-day connection with the people around us. A final reflection: embracing the absurd as a path to clarity. As we reach the end of our journey, we circle back to Camus's fundamental insight. The world does not neatly conform to our longing for meaning. This is our predicament. Yet, within this stark realization lies the seed of a profound transformation. The absurd, far from being a cause for despair alone, can spark a luminous clarity, a recognition that while the universe might be silent, we possess the power to speak, to act, and to create. Modern psychology echoes this refrain in its emphasis on self-awareness, emotional regulation, and values-based living. Therapies that encourage acceptance, mindfulness, and existential exploration resonate with Camus's call for lucid rebellion. Rather than seeking a final answer, we learn to live fully in the question, thriving not despite, but perhaps because of, the inherent ambiguity of existence. This perspective runs contrary to many cultural narratives that insist on definitive solutions or neat resolutions. In an age of quick fixes and instant connections, embracing the absurd can feel like stepping into a quiet clearing in the forest. unfamiliar, possibly unsettling, but also brimming with new possibility. We stop chasing illusions and start inhabiting the raw present. We open ourselves to honest self-examination, to genuine connection with others, and to the joy of creative expression. Camus' dance with the absurd, then, becomes our dance as well. We juggle the tension between longing and indifference, forging a life that does not wait for cosmic approval, but finds depth in the very act of living. The script you've just experienced is, in itself, an invitation, a call to reflect on your own daily routines, your internal rebellions, and the unique purpose you choose to craft. In practical terms, you might consider integrating small rituals of awareness into your life, moments where you pause to acknowledge life's strangeness and your freedom to respond. Or you might set aside time to explore your creative impulses, letting the sense of the absurd catalyze new ideas, art forms, or conversations. On a broader scale, you might engage in community or global issues that matter to you, forging meaning through collective action. As this concludes our exploration, remember that Camus does not give us closure in the conventional sense. Instead, he leaves us mid-step in the dance, boulder at the top of the hill, eternally ready to roll back down. Yet, in choosing to push upward again and again, we affirm our devotion to life, our refusal to succumb to nihilism or false hope. We stand, just like Sisyphus, on the brink of possibility, poised to find happiness in the very act of revolt. Thank you for joining us on this modern psychological odyssey through the lens of Camus and the absurd. If you find resonance with these ideas, you might revisit them in your quiet hours or share them with friends and fellow seekers. Here at Neuromystique, we invite you to keep questioning, keep creating, and keep living vividly, even amid the uncertainty. After all, in the silent symphony of existence, our conscious, defiant participation might just be the most meaningful gesture of all.